Hello, Tamara Doris, your real estate professor and real estate professional in Sacramento. And I want to do a video. I was going to do one video that kind of distinguished probate sales from estate sales, but I decided that would be too long of a video. So I'm going to do two different videos. And today we're going to talk about probate. So what is probate? Probate is when someone passes away, they own real property, a house, property, and they did not leave an estate. They did not have a trust. Now, back in the old days, and this is in California, right? Back in the old days, you could have a will, and sometimes if that will contained all of the things as a valid contract, which is the names, the date, the property address, had to have certain language. It used to be acceptable, especially if there were no other heirs who might disagree, right? They may contest. If one sibling says, no, mom left this to me, and the other one's like, no, she wanted me to have it, that would be, involve the court, because a will doesn't normally stand up. And I can tell you now, these days, in the 2020s, a handwritten will where X marks the spot is not going to stand up, even if there are no other heirs. Now, it's helpful if there's no other heirs, because when you're doing a probate, even though it will still have to go through probate, you won't have to argue with the court who gets to be the executor. The court gives the executor to whoever is next in line. And so if there's siblings and it's, everyone wants it, then that can be a whole other issue. And I'll tell you the worst thing about probate, and this is why I always tell my clients, even my own kids, get a trust. Because listen, if you don't have a trust, everything you own, a big hunk of it is going to be tied up in court costs and attorney fees. And attorney fees can be very, very big in California, right? And I don't want to quote because that would not be necessarily correct, and attorneys can vary, but you can plan on a minimum of $10,000 out of the equity if there's that much equity. So it could go as high as $20,000 or more, right? So I know I'm preaching to the choir, because if you're watching this and you're in the middle of a probate or you're getting ready to start a probate, it may be like, I didn't know that, I couldn't help my family member then, and it's too late. So we're going to go on with the probate. But again, I'm just giving you a little commercial. If you need a referral for a good probate or an estate attorney, I can give that to you, one that I've worked with quite a bit. But having a trust, yeah, it may cost you a couple thousand to do it, but having a trust ensures that your life of hard work and money and all the things that you've accumulated and amassed is not going to just go to pay attorney fees, right? You could pay $2,000 now or whatever it is, or pay $20,000 later. So anyway, that's my little commercial on why everyone that owns any property should have a trust. Okay, what's a probate? A probate is where someone passes away, there is no trust, and basically the state of California, the court gets to decide what happens with the property. So when you first have a probate, if you are the executor, let's say you're the only child. And even in times I have found when there are more than, when I'm dealing with probate sales, there are more siblings than, maybe there's 3 or 4. Somehow they decide, okay, this is the person, this is the oldest, or this is the person who's going to be the executor. It gets really complicated if you decide we're all going to be in charge. And I've done probate sales like that, and it can get really complicated because it's the strangest thing, but money tends to make people crazy. So if there's like 4 siblings and there's a house for sale, everyone gets suspicious of each other. And I hope that's not you, and I hope you don't have that experience, because it's really icky and nobody wants to feel that way, especially after you've lost a loved one. So it's always best, if possible, to have one executor. And you have to have a probate attorney, and there's no way around that. And I have researched it. I teach real estate law. I've taught that many times at American River College. So I know the law, and I have tried to circumvent it and skirt around it, and you just can't. You have to get an attorney. An attorney has to file all the documents. So the first thing you can do is get your attorney, a probate attorney. And I would shop price if I were you. Honestly, I would shop price for a probate attorney. And once you've done the paperwork, the attorney will file something with the Sacramento court. If you're in Sacramento, they'll file it with the Sacramento court, and then you as the executor get to pick your realtor. You get to pick the real estate agent you want to work with. And I highly recommend, if you don't choose me, I highly recommend that you choose another agent who has lots of experience working with probate and estate sales. Why? Because they're a different animal. For one thing, and this is not, I'm not giving you a blanket statement. Some people do take care of their properties, but a lot of times people who have not gone to the expense or the trouble to do an actual trust maybe haven't kept their property in the best of shape. So there's going to often be repairs or updates or upgrades that haven't been made. That's not the transaction that you're going to have. You are not going to be in a transaction where a buyer can come and say, okay, if you fix this, this, and this, which is typical in your traditional transactions, you're not going to have that in a probate. No, 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 no. Why? Because you're not going to put money in on your own to fix it up. Now, I digress. But when my own mother passed away, she did not have an estate, which is one of the reasons I'm so passionate about having a trust, right? She did not have a trust. And I put $50,000 into it, but it needed so much more work that what I decided to do, because I already was in at 50,000, right? And she only had like maybe 100,000 in equity. I'm like, I got to cut my losses. So I put that 50 grand to get it to where the back mortgage was paid up. And then I just sold it to an investor who then turned around and made another 100 grand on it. But you know what? He had to invest quite a bit more in it and do all the work and the labor. And I just wasn't into that. So you have to make a decision. If there's enough equity, and this is where a realtor is going to be, I'm sorry, I don't mean to diss any attorneys, but a realtor is going to be much more helpful than a probate attorney, because probate attorneys know the courts, they know the laws, but when it comes to selling the houses and what should be done and what shouldn't, don't go to an attorney. They're not going to be able to tell you. They don't know. That's not their wheelhouse. They know law, they know process, they know procedure, they know case law, and they know how to do the filings. They aren't realtors. So my question that I always ask someone in a probate situation, if there's things that need to be fixed up, because most probate sales in the state of California are as is. So you have to decide as the executor, do we want to spend any money on having it painted or having the carpets cleaned or some of those things? Now, as the executor, you're going to get that money back in the form of equity. So the first thing we do before we even decide what needs to be fixed up or not is we look at the equity. How much money is there going to be based on a reasonable, intelligent number that we're going to get for the property? And then how much of that is going to you, the executor? And or if you're the executor, do you have to share it with other siblings? So all of these things matter, but the very first thing we look at is the valuation of the home. What is the property worth? What is it worth? Secondly, you've got to look at what kind of loan, because I've had a lot of probate sales where the person who passed away had a reverse mortgage. Oh my gosh. And reverse mortgages are way better now than they used to be. But if your family member got a reverse mortgage back in the day, those could be real big ripoffs. So we got to check that out, because sometimes, and it's terrible to say, but sometimes those reverse mortgages really hooked a person in a bad way. So we got to make sure that that's not what's going on with you. And if it is, how we can work around that. So that is, are there any siblings? Now, let me give you a case scenario. If there's a sibling, let's say you and your sibling have, let's say your mom's house, and you've got about 100,000 in equity. And you decide, or you talk to a realtor like me, and I'm like, look, if you guys paint the inside of this and we do some minor landscaping, I think you're going to get more money because it's in pretty good condition. And if you decide, let's do this, and your sibling says, I'm not putting any money into it, you can put that money into it, and then out of the proceeds, you get that much more out. So you can reimburse yourself. One of the most important things, and I would say this for estate sales and probate sales, is to make darn sure you document everything. Keep receipts, document who you talk to, document how much you spend. When you're the executor, you can recoup that. Now, it's not as important when you're the executor if there's no other heirs. If you have no siblings that you have to share things with, or no other, cousins, it's just a straight up, you get everything. I'm not as worried about it. I still keep track of it, and I suggest you do too. But it's when you are putting money out, when you're driving to the property, like to meet me at the property, that gas mileage goes on your documentation. If we have to sit there and do paperwork, and this goes on your documentation, because you need to get reimbursed for that. Trust me, your attorney will charge you for every 5-minute phone call, right? Filing every piece of paper. So you need to do the same when it comes to the documentation. Even if you love your siblings and you want to be totally fair, you're going to have to take time out. Being an executor is a big responsibility. Okay, so probate sales in California are as is. Once we have an offer on the property, then it goes, you tell the attorney, this is the offer I want. The attorney will file with the court, and the court's going to say yes. I mean, it's like, why would the court not? Well, I'll tell you why they wouldn't, is if it's contested. Like, I've had cases, one comes to mind, where a gentleman passed away, and he made his wife the executor. She wasn't on title. She didn't own the property, but she was the executor. Well, he had a child that was to get 50% of the proceeds, and that adult child fought her, contested every step of the way, and it just made for a nightmare transaction. And the poor woman was just trying to sell the house, gonna give the guy's son half the money, but that guy was like, nope, I want to be involved. Well, he wasn't the executor, but nevertheless, people like that can stall the process. So one of the things you need to know is when we list your probate sale, your home for sale, it's going to take longer. Like, I can go list a house across the street, literally, I did across the street, and it's a regular transaction, and it can be sold and closed in a month. No big deal. It doesn't work that way with probate court. It takes longer. So we need to be really clear in MLS, this is a probate sale. So when the person makes the offer on it, they need to understand, number one, that we're not going to do any repairs. It's an as is. So you get a lot of investors for probate sales. Number two, it's going to take longer to close because it has to go through the courts. And the courts in California are so congested. The other good thing, there's a good thing, is that when you have a probate sale, because you didn't live there, presumably, the disclosures are much fewer. So you're not expected to know how many remotes are there to the garage door and has ever been a flooding or whatever. You're not expected. And so I try to protect my clients by saying, you are exempt from these disclosures. I don't want you to make a guess at it and then end up getting sued. So you're just kind of exempt from a lot of the disclosures. Usually with probate sales, buyers need to release contingencies sooner. Like, they can't wait. I need a month long to inspect and all that, because the court wants to keep moving. And every time something has to be filed, it takes the court a few minutes or a few weeks to catch up with it. So what else do I want to say? I think most important is that when you have a probate sale, oftentimes maybe the person wasn't expecting to pass away and you weren't expecting it. So there's going to be a lot of junk, some good stuff and some junk. So what I normally do when I go talk to someone about a probate sale is I say, okay, if I think there's collectibles that's worth, that may be valuable, then I'll get an estate person out there to see if it is. But remember, when you use an estate seller, and there are professionals that do estate sales, they're going to take a nice chunk of it. So in this day and age with the internet, sometimes you're better off as the executor selling things yourself. One of the things included with my services is I help do the estate sale. I help do it, and I don't charge you extra for it. It's all inclusive in my fee. So I will come, I will help you decide what you should price things at. Got my phone there, we look online, we look on eBay, we price things properly, and then you can make money out of doing that. And remember, the time that we take doing that, that's documentable time for you. That's billable time for you as far as the estate goes. So we then would have a yard sale. Now, not a yard sale, but an estate sale. Now, after the sale is over, you're going to have stuff left over because everything's not going to sell. And then I can help you arrange to donate it to Goodwill or you know, here in Sacramento, I do a lot of things with Desiree on Auburn Boulevard, but whatever you want, however you want to donate it, and we can do the donation. And then, you know, if you decide to have the house cleaned, I have resources for that as well that I can help you. You know, that comes out of your pocket, but you can also reimburse yourself out of the estate. I think I want to close by saying that there's a lot of work involved in a probate sale. It's going to take a lot of patience, but if there's equity in the home, it's going to obviously be worth it, right? But I want you to understand it does not pass over me that if you have a probate sale you need help with, that you've lost a loved one. That does not, you know, I'm not like, oh my gosh, let's just sell this house. I realize sometimes it's shocking. It's always sad. And I understand that that's a loss. And sometimes the last thing you want to do is mess around with contracts and paperwork and estate sales. So I'm here to support you. I've done this a lot. I've been in real estate for 30 years. My mother was in real estate, and I've had my own estate sales to deal with my mom and my grandma. So I get it on an up close personal level, but I also am here to support you. So please let me know. My name and number and contact is below. Feel free to text me anytime. If I can support you, I sure will. Have a good day, and thanks for watching.